The autumn air at Utah Valley University was crisp. Students moved between classes, their faces lit by the afternoon sun. The autumn air at Utah Valley University was crisp. Students moved between classes, their faces lit by the afternoon sun. It was supposed to be just another day, another campus event. Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, stood at a podium in the grand ballroom. He was a familiar figure to millions. His voice, a constant presence on the airwaves and online, was in its element. The crowd was a mix of eager supporters and curious onlookers. The energy in the room was electric, a blend of excitement and tension that often followed him. No one could have known that this speech on this ordinary Tuesday would be his last. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the hall. It was a sound that didn't belong. It was too loud, too violent. For a split second, there was confusion. Then came the second crack, and the collective gasp of the audience. Charlie Kirk faltered at the podium. He clutched his chest, a look of disbelief on his face. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by screams. Panic erupted. Emergency services were called. The campus was placed on immediate lockdown. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. News alerts began to flash across phones throughout the room, spreading the terrible truth. The initial reports were confused, fragmented, but one fact soon became tragically clear. Charlie Kirk, one of the most prominent and polarizing voices in modern American politics, had been shot. He was critically wounded. The hope that he might survive dwindled with every tick of the clock. By the time the sun began to set over the Wasatch Mountains, the official announcement came. Charlie Kirk was pronounced dead. The news hit like a shockwave. It traveled from the lockdown campus in Orem, Utah, across the nation and around the world. It didn't matter if you agreed with him or vehemently opposed him. The event itself was a profound violation. A political argument, however heated, had been settled with a bullet. On this day, September 16, 2025, the loud, often divisive but undeniably influential megaphone of Charlie Kirk had been permanently silenced by an act of unthinkable violence, leaving a stunned nation to grapple with the aftermath. The news spread like a wildfire in the digital age. It was on every screen, on every channel. America ground to a halt. In homes across the country, families watched the developing story with a sense of disbelief. Vigils began to spring up spontaneously. From the steps of state capitals to the town squares of small communities, people gathered. They held candles. They held signs. Some bore messages of support for Kirk and his family. These gatherings were quiet, somber affairs. They were filled with faces from all walks of life, united not by political affiliation but by a shared sense of shock. Internationally, the reaction was just as swift. World leaders issued statements condemning the assassination. The British Prime Minister called it an attack on the democratic process itself. The French president spoke of a dark day for political discourse. There was a genuine sense of alarm. The world has often looked to America as a bastion of stable democracy. This act of political violence suggested that the deep divisions within the United States had reached a terrifying new breaking point. Back home, the symbols of mourning were everywhere. On cable news, the usual partisan bickering was replaced by somber reflection. Social media saw a brief truce. Hashtags like #RipCharlieKirk and #UtahStrong trended for hours. For his millions of followers, the grief was personal and profound. They saw him not just as a political commentator but as a leader. This initial solidarity, however, soon began to show cracks. The moment was too charged, the divisions too deep. The blame game began quietly at first, in the dark corners of the internet. Then it spilled onto the airwaves. Some on the right began to point fingers at the hateful rhetoric of the left, claiming it had created an environment where such an act was inevitable. They compiled lists of harsh criticisms leveled against Kirk by political opponents and media figures. On the other side, many on the left expressed horror at the act but cautioned against turning Kirk into a saint. This created a difficult dynamic. How do you mourn a figure you fundamentally opposed without validating the ideas you fought against? The shared candlelight vigils of the first night gave way to more politically charged gatherings. Rallies demanding justice for Charlie were met with counter-protests calling for an end to divisive politics. Families found themselves divided at the dinner table. The assassination, instead of bringing the country together, was acting as a magnifying glass for its existing fractures. It forced every American to confront the question of culpability. The fragile union of grief had shattered. Charlie Kirk's assassination did more than just end a life, it created a martyr, In death, his influence threatened to become even more potent than it was in life. The assassination at Utah Valley University sent a tremor of fear through every college and university in the country. In the weeks following the shooting, a new era of campus security began to take shape. Metal detectors began appearing at the entrances to student unions, libraries, lecture halls. This new security posture has come at a cost, both financial and cultural. The presence of heavy security creates an atmosphere of suspicion and anxiety, counter to the academic ideal of free exchange of ideas.
Dr. Marcus Thorne warns of the chilling effect. When students and faculty have to pass through security to discuss controversial ideas, the message is that those ideas are dangerous.
This can lead to self-censorship and a retreat from challenging discourse that universities are supposed to foster. Administrators are now caught in an impossible position. If they allow a polarizing figure to speak, they face enormous security costs and risk of violence. If they cancel an event due to security concerns, they are accused of censorship and caving to threats. Legal challenges are almost certain to follow. Free speech advocates are preparing lawsuits arguing security concerns are being used to silence conservative voices. The assassination was not just a physical event, it was an information event, amplified by the chaotic energy of social media. Within minutes, false reports about the shooter's identity began to circulate. Doctored photos and fake manifestos went viral. The platforms were once again overwhelmed by the sheer volume of malicious content, forcing a renewed debate about social media responsibility. Security analyst Dr. Ben Carter points out the danger of digital echo chambers. These platforms create feedback loops that can accelerate radicalization. Social media companies took their most aggressive content moderation actions to date, deplatforming thousands of accounts. However, these actions were met with fierce backlash. Critics accused tech giants of partisan censorship, using the tragedy to silence dissent. This triggered a massive migration to alternative platforms, further fragmenting the digital public square. The assassination has turned every campus administrator into a security expert and every speaking invitation into a high-stakes gamble. The courts will be forced to weigh competing rights in a new and dangerous context, free speech versus safety. The digital echoes will reverberate for years, forcing a reckoning with the role these platforms play in democracy's health. Universities, social media companies, and legal institutions all struggle to balance freedom with security in this new reality. The transformation from open society to surveillance state accelerates, justified by the need to prevent another tragedy. The question is no longer just about free speech versus censorship. It is about how to maintain space for open dialogue without creating space that incubates violence. The assassination has exposed the inadequacy of our current frameworks for governing both physical and digital spaces in a polarized democracy. The death of Charlie Kirk has left an indelible scar on the American soul. It is a wound that goes much deeper than the loss of one man. The assassination has held up a mirror to the nation. The reflection is deeply disturbing. It shows a country consumed by partisan hatred, a media ecosystem that profits from division, a political class that fuels the flames. We now stand at a critical crossroads. The path we choose will define the future of the American experiment. One path leads toward deeper division. Retribution and blame grow. Kirk's martyrdom justifies vicious, uncompromising politics. Political opponents become mortal enemies. Violence becomes a tacit political tool. The other side is dehumanized. If we continue down this road, this assassination won't be isolated. It will herald more tragedy. The other path is harder. It is the path of introspection and reconciliation. It requires lowering the temperature of our rhetoric. It demands listening to those we disagree with. It means holding leaders accountable for incendiary language while re-establishing a baseline of decency. This moment is a test of our national character. The assassination forces fundamental questions about who we are. It forces fundamental questions about who we are and who we want to be. Will we allow more hatred, division, and violence? Or can we find the courage to step back from the brink? The choice is ours, and the world is watching. The legacy of this terrible day is not yet written. It will be defined by the collective response of 330 million Americans. The assassination of Charlie Kirk will be remembered as either the moment America chose healing over hatred, or the day we lost our way completely. The choice is ours to make. In this moment of profound crisis, we must decide what kind of nation we want to be. The future of American democracy hangs in the balance. The choice is ours.